Okay, so let me get this straight. China's booming, that's the narrative. Exports are up, factories are busy, and the media's back on that old hype train like it's 2014? Come on, that's not a comeback, that's a cover-up. Behind this so-called surge, China's economy is running out of gas and pretty damn fast. But you won't hear that on Bloomberg. You won't hear that from the people still clinging to the fantasy that China is going to own the century. You'll hear it here. But first, Dubby. This episode is powered by clean energy that doesn't leave you jittery or cracked out. No sugar, no fake chemicals, no bullshit. Just straight focus. Links in the description. Use the code to get your 10% off. All right, let's talk about what's really happening inside China. So yes, on paper, China's exports are up. They're shipping more, they're moving volume. But here's the twist. That doesn't mean demand is up. A lot of these shipments are inventory dumps. Products that are going to sit in warehouses for months and then get pushed out, not because somebody ordered them, but because they're running out of space and liquidity. It's like a clearance sale for an economy. And Beijing's happy to fudge the numbers and keep appearances up. They need the world to think they're back. Because if the world stops believing China is stable, foreign investment dries up, what's left of it, currency weakens, the dominoes start to fall. This isn't economic growth, it's economic makeup applied to a system with internal bleeding. Let's talk about what's really going on under the hood. Real estate, it's still a disaster. Over 70% of household wealth in China is tied up in property, and that market has completely collapsed. Youth unemployment, officially unknown. The Chinese government literally stopped reporting it in 2024 because it got too embarrassing. Local debt, out of control. Cities borrowed to build ghost cities, and now there's no one to live in them or pay it back. And here's the kicker. Private business confidence is at an all-time low. You don't fix that with a few export orders. You don't reboot trust with propaganda. This is a population that's quietly losing faith in the system, and that's not good for China. So why the export push? Because it's the only card left. The domestic economy is frozen, households aren't spending, the government is cracking down on dissent, so they're trying to save face globally. But look closer, it's not working. Exports to the US? Down, even with workaround routes through Vietnam and Mexico. European demand? It's shrinking, as it will. The EU's trying to avoid dependency after watching what happened with Russia. And the EU has a falling demographics. China's flooding Africa and Southeast Asia with cheap goods, but not to make a profit, just to keep the factories running, and their workers barely even get paid. That's not a strategy, that's a panic with a PowerPoint. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. All of this pressure, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Trump's tariffs didn't fail. They exposed the fault lines, as did Biden's. They proved China wasn't as self-sustaining as everyone thought, that its growth wasn't real, it was borrowed, and that its dominance depended on our markets, our capital, and our ignorance. And now, they're running out of all three. What we're seeing isn't a thriving economy, it's a state-run machine dumping product while trying to hold the country together with zip ties. And behind the scenes, they're still sending signals to Washington quietly, carefully. I believe a trade deal got done as we speak. They want back in, not because we need them, but because they need us. Why do we need cheap Chinese junk? And I know you think they got a lockdown on minerals, but they don't have it like you think. And ask yourself, if China's doing so well, why are international firms leaving, foreign CEOs getting detained and interrogated? The Chinese government's hiding economic data like it's a state secret. They just had a bailout for the banking sector. They're not acting like winners. They're acting like a regime that knows it's running out of time. And that's where episode 2 comes in. Because if Trump's model actually works, if tariffs and economic pressure force real outcomes, then China's not looking at short-term pain. They're staring down the collapse of an entire strategy. The model that made them the factory of the world is crumbling. We can't afford for them to be the factory of the world. No other country can either. So no, the boom isn't real. It's noise, it's smoke and mirrors wrapped in spreadsheets. China is bleeding, and America might be regaining control of the wheel. In the next episode of the Trump Realignment, we're asking the big question. What if this shit works? What if the critics are wrong and Trump's strategy actually pays off? What if it resets the global order and puts it right back in America's hands? Subscribe to America's Geopolitics to find out. Drop a comment. Do you think China's economic rise is over, or are we just seeing the beginning of something even worse? And don't forget, W's in the description. Use the code and get your 10% off. This is Frank with America's Geopolitics.